Good afternoon. I'm going to call the City Council meeting of December 4th, 2012 to order, St. Barbara's Day. Would you please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Francisco, Hodgkiss, here. House, Murillo, here. Rouse, White, Mayor Schneider.
Here. And ceremonial items. Item 1.
Item 1, Employee Recognition Service Award Pins.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As you know, every month we present service award pins to employees who are celebrating important anniversaries with the city. And we have, 10 employees this month who represent about 125 years of service who will receive pins. And I'd like to read their names into the record, and then we have one here to receive his 25-year pin. So first, with 5 years, Francine Grady, who's an accounting assistant in finance. Tyler Larson, police officer. Michael Barreo, who's a street maintenance worker 1 in Public Works. And Adam Daniels, who's a custodian in Public Works. 10 years, Kathleen Kennedy, who's sitting right back there, who's an associate planner in community development, and Lynn Goodnick, who's the administrative specialist at the airport. 15 years, Stanley Macias, who's a painter at the airport. 20 years, Douglas Wilson, who's a plumber in Public Works. And with 25 years, Rose Frausto, who's an accounting assistant in Public Works. And here to receive his pin, also with 25 years, is Rob Badger, who's the Information Services Supervisor in IS. So.
There's your pin. You're welcome. Rob began his career with the City of Santa Barbara in December 1987 as a systems analyst hired to support the city's first internally hosted financial system. He was promoted in April 1994 to senior system analyst and in November 2002 to his current position of information system supervisor. Rob was the third employee hired into information systems and is the longest employed person in the division. Rob has a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from California State University, Northridge. He gained his financial system experience working for MyTech Computer Systems and then formed a consulting company that sold business systems. 23 years ago, Rob served as the chief architect of the city's financial management system that is still in use today. Rob has dedicated his career to maintaining and enhancing the system. He now leads one of the city's largest and most important computer projects, the replacement of the new state-of-the-art financial management system. Rob has played lead roles in many business system projects critical to city operations, including business license, utility billing, meter reading, and the city's centralized maintenance management application. He is also responsible for the Centralized Geographic Information System, GIS, and the city's public and internal web services. Rob is the proud father of 2 sons, Kevin and Chris, and 1 daughter, Karen. He and his wife, Doris, live in Santa Ynez, and he enjoys traveling, reading, and spending time with his family. So, Rob, it's with great pleasure that we honor you today for your 25 years of service to the city of Santa Barbara. On behalf of the City Council, the citizens of Santa Barbara, and your fellow employees, I congratulate you. Thank you and for all your service, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Schneider and council members. I really appreciate the honor. Thank you very much of receiving this proclamation. I have enjoyed working at the City of Santa Barbara for 25 years. I feel very blessed to be able to have a job here, and the benefits that I've received for myself and my family have been wonderful. 25 years ago, when I saw other staff come up and get their 25-year proclamation, I never thought I would be here one day, 25 years later, but here I am. One of the best parts of working with the city are the people, some of those folks here today. I really enjoy working with folks, helping them with their computer issues and software, etc. So that's been a real blessing in my life. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
We'll have public comment in just a moment. If you could sit down, please.
I have to take the bus for my son.
I know we're getting to public comment right now, so please take a seat.
I don't
Take a
have
seat.
enough time. Thank you.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there aren't, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we're moving on to public comment. We'll start with Megan Alley and then continue with Denise Irma Salazar. You have 2 minutes at the podium.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for appointing me to the Parks and Recreation Commission in June. It is an honor and privilege to serve. I am here to ask for reappointment to the commission. I apologize for missing the scheduled interviews, and I assure you that my confusion as to the interview dates does not reflect my lack of time or commitment to the position. I thoroughly appreciate the opportunity to bring my career knowledge to the commission, and I am obliged for the knowledge I have gained because of the position. I enjoy conducting site visits of street trees with pending applications, as well as reviewing information as it relates to the street tree master plan. The process of studying the recommendations from staff and the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and then ultimately providing an assessment through my position as a commissioner is a procedure I have become well versed in. For November's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, I was asked to research and provide comments to the Planning Commission and the City Council on the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge Replacement Project and the Beachway Relocation Addendum, as well as the fiscal year 2014 to 2019 Capital Improvement Program. I have relished studying the supporting documents for these items of business, and I am honored to contribute to the process for these projects. In October, my fellow commissioners appointed me as a liaison to our Creeks Advisory Committee, and this is an appointment that is well matched to my experience and interest, and I recently met with Cameron Benson to get an even more thorough briefing on his department's exciting activities. I am eager to continue with this commitment. Thank you again for your consideration, and please let me know if I can provide you with any further information. I very much hope to correct my honest mistake and to continue serving on our city's Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Irma Salazar will be followed by Kenneth Locke. You can move the,
Nothing further true.
there you go.
My name is Denise Irma Salazar, and I'm very concerned about my son's safety. I tried to go to the school district. I tried to do everything. And Miss Casey Kilgore, she called the cops on me, called child services on me. Well, she had no reason to do that. I'm a full-time parent at this point, and I do things in the house, you know, my chores, and I'm concerned about the transfer for my son because he's not happy where he's at. The staff is out of control. My civil rights is for the parents and for you guys, for all the people. I just come here, it's against the Constitution to use people. My kindness is not my weakness. I love to help people, and I respect all people. I need to be respected as a person. My driver license period was canceled for no reason, and my car is parked over there. I don't have time for misrespecting anybody because I have to respect all guidelines. As a parent, I try to do as best thing I can to help other people, my ideas, and listen to other parents. I'm very sick, my body, but my mind is not wrong, or my heart. So I respect you as a mayor, and I love all you people, and I hope you respect me. I don't think Ms. Kilgore is qualified to run the school district. I try, Estela Angeles. She harassed me, even they called the cops on me 4 times, child services for no reason. I've been a parent for my son. This is my son. And I was a volunteer only, and she got me a staff. Which one is it, staff or volunteer? It's not, I don't understand that. So I think they all have to be investigated as the privacy of a constitution, state, and government. They all have to be fingerprint, like I have to be fingerprint as a mother.
You have to wind up, please.
Thank you. And have a good day.
Thank you very
I
much.
love you all.
Thank you. Kenneth Locke will be followed by Nancy Tunnell, who will be the final speaker.
My name is Kenneth Locke. Just got my website back up, KennethLocke.com, and I got a Twitter account and all that, and just communicating with the world, and kind of hoping to set everybody kind of straight kind of situation. I've been spending a little time with the concept of interdisciplinary education. I started working on a page explaining myself in relation to being a master, say, or enlightened master of the fine art form of painting through the abstract art movement. You know, I can actually provide everybody with a means for understanding, you know, why we had the abstract art movement and the works of like Jackson Pollock and going back into the history. It's really important that the kids get this education that I can actually provide, because it's like a springboard so that they can get into this next age in education. But then also I'm the enlightened master of tennis. And based on those two enlightenments and that I mastered these disciplines, I mastered kind of the nature of how they've been historically corrupted. I mastered, say, capitalism in relation to the arts and then also athletics. I realized the relationship with capitalism in relation to, again, the arts and athletics corrupts a person. And right now, like I was just down at I train with tennis down at the municipal courts, and my practice is to develop a holistic oneness with my whole body. That means developing both arms and no competition. I don't need to compete. So I'm here and now representing the standard of a teacher in relation to an education which is based on interdisciplinary, and I'm hopeful that somebody, maybe this community as a whole, can recognize the job that I can actually do for this community, to bring it over to where we all become intelligent. And I started a page called Interdisciplinary Intelligence. That's where we recognize two or more people in relation to them being intelligent in relation to multiple disciplines. Thank you.
Nancy Tunnell.
Now, I've begged you guys to acquaint yourselves with Agenda 21, especially since you're implementing it in the form of bulb-out street narrowings, build up, not out. You know the drill. But now you're getting a taste of how far Agenda 21 is going, and it will go much farther. A shopping district without control of its parking lots is at the mercy of whoever owns them. This is all by design. Agenda 21 is a plan to reconfigure human habitat and activity and put all wealth and resources into the hands of the most powerful elites and their corporate and financial partners, and real estate plays a big part in this. Now, these are the people who literally planned Agenda 21 and pushed it into a United Nations mandate. And if you ever wondered who really runs the UN, just investigate the people selling Agenda 21 and global sustainability. And this has nothing to do with growing chickens and tomatoes in your backyard, which is fine, and that's a good thing. But back to parking lots. Just Google. This is on the internet. Anybody can look at it. Rethinking the parking lot. Anyway, you will see they're already there. They're already making plans for your parking lots. You will see high-level planners touting the need to make them sustainable or change them into some more valuable asset for the community. However, if you're not entirely gullible, particularly if you'll do a little research, you'll realize that this is just an excuse to move valuable real estate into powerful private hands and to continue to chip away at the viability of cities as they exist in order to excuse their restructuring. I would love to see you fight this theft like mad dogs, but you cannot win a battle if you do not know who or what you're fighting. Thank you.
That concludes public comment. We move on to the consent calendar. There's some items to read.
Item number 3, hearing for adoption of a resolution of order to vacate easement for public right-of-way on a portion of Luena Drive. Recommendation that council find the subject portion of Luena Drive is not necessary for present and prospective public street easement purposes, and adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara ordering the vacation of the portion of Luena Drive located adjacent to assessors parcel numbers 029-202-001 and 029-201-004 as hereinafter described, and providing for the recordation of this resolution upon successful completion of conditions contained herein. Item 4, introduction of ordinance for renewal of agreement to use recycled water. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving the renewal of an agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and Ealing's Park dated as of January 10th, 2013 for the use and delivery of the city's recycled water at Ealing's Park.
Thank you. Without further objection, we'll waive further reading. Is there anyone who needs to take an item off, or is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to take, or at least ask a question on the recycled water, number 4, and one more. Hold on a second here. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. White, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a comment I'd like to make on item 6.
Okay. Why don't we do item 4 that was already read? It's the renewal of the agreement to use recycled water. Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is only, do we make money on this deal?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, yes, we do charge Ealing's the recycled water rate, which is the $1.98 per 100 cubic feet. And so they are charged like all the other recycled water users for the water.
And typically, what would that bring us annually? Is we give them, what, 800 acre feet a year, I think. Is that correct? Did I see that?
That's for all the users?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. So for Ealing's, they use on average about 10,000 HCF a year. So that would be about roughly $20,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. On item 6, if you could read item 6.
Item 6, contract for technical services for the Commercial, Industrial, and Institutional Water Use Survey and Incentive Program.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Jordan, I think on this item, this is one where there would be 10 deep analyses done of large customers, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I would think it would be useful to have a feedback loop on this one, to actually survey those customers at the end of that process and ask their feedback on it. Was this an effective program for them? And just try and get some feedback from those customers after this effort.
Mayor Schneider, Councilmember White, I think that's a really good idea, and we are going to be in partnership with them working on the incentive component, where we'll be working with their management and board, depending on the type of business, as far as what offerings we'll be giving for incentives. So that will be, we'll take that to note, because that's a good idea to include that in that process. We really see it as a dynamic process that'll be evolving probably at least throughout a year relationship with them, where we'll be doing first the evaluation and then providing the incentive, and then working with them to get the incentive or have what we're incentivizing completed.
Okay. And as I say, Madam Mayor, it would be great to just get some feedback from them at the end of that as part of your, when you do summarize this effort, to then have that as part of it. I think would be helpful.
Mr. Hotchkiss, did you have a question also?
I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Who are these large volume users?
Mayor Schneider, Councilmember Hotchkiss, we have a report that we run out of our billing system, which we call High Consumption Report, and that actually runs all the highest consumption customers. So what we do is we look at the customer, because the customer, for example, the Santa Barbara School District is our highest water using customer, but they have 29 accounts and 41 meters. But for a combination, they're the most water usage. And then the second is Fess Parker. They actually have only 2 meters, but their total usage is the second highest in the city. So that report is very informative, and that's what we're using to base these 10 commercial customers that we'll be targeting.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
There is, Madam Mayor.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. On to item number 11.
Item 11, citywide performance highlights for fiscal year 2012.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As I think all of you know, the city is a large business. We have a budget of $250 million, 1,000 employees, and we have a number of different services we provide to the community. You know, everything from police and fire service, the airport, parks and recreation, but we're a large, complex organization. And one of the most important things that good managers do is evaluate performance on a regular basis. And the way we do it in our city is through a program we call the P3 program that we instituted about 10 years ago. And the goal is that it be a systematic program that goes throughout the organization and starts with the preparation of the budget, where we set specific goals and objectives, and then monitor performance through the year, and then at the end of the year kind of tally up the results to see how we did. And so this is our annual report to you, the City Council, on what we've achieved over the last year. This is a very high-level summary of what we do, and because there's just a tremendous number of there's programs, and then within each program there's a number of different performance measures. But we wanted to give you kind of the high-level performance or a summary of this past fiscal year. I will apologize, this is a little delayed this year. Normally we try to do this in October, but we had a staffing change. Lori Peterson took the business manager job in the police department, and so because of that, it's a little delayed. And the way we're going to do this today is Nina Johnson, who really was in on the beginning of establishing this program, is going to go through the results within the city, kind of describe the program, and then I'm going to talk a little about the comparative cities that we also compare with at the conclusion. So with that, I'll turn over to Nina to kind of walk you through the results of the year. Nina?
Thank you. Again, I also wanted to thank Lori Peterson, who worked with the staff throughout the year in reviewing program performance, and during fiscal year 2012. She left a few months ago, so I want to thank her. And also Mindy Hegeman in our office. She gathered a lot of the data that we used in the comparative indicators, and I really appreciated her work on the report. So going through, Jim already covered, kind of gave an overview of the presentation. We are going to be discussing our citywide performance highlights, so performance highlights in all departments, and then also some key management indicators, and then going over comparative financial indicators. If you look at the goals of our performance management program, our program really serves as a tool for staff to plan and prioritize their work in the upcoming year. The program gives us an ability to communicate to council and the public each year's objectives, and then now with the results of those plans. The program really encourages employees throughout the organization to be responsible for their program operations. And I really think that when you look at our program compared to performance management programs in other cities, this is one of the key things probably that sets us apart, is that we have a lot of participation by supervisors and managers at the program level. We're not just looking at performance measures at the department level. When we're looking at supervisors and managers, we call them program owners. There are approximately 130 programs throughout the city in all 10 departments, and the same number of program owners. So they're responsible for working with their staff to set ambitious but achievable objectives and working throughout the year to make it happen. Other key components of our program: regular review and reporting of the information. We want to make sure everyone's looking at fresh data and able to make adjustments throughout the year. Flexibility when we get new information, and we have the ability to make changes as we go. The performance objectives are also integrated in our management performance evaluation system. So each year, as managers get performance evaluations, we look at what the progress was in achieving the objectives in their area. Just looking at kind of the program cycle, at the beginning of the cycle, program owners prepare the objectives. They work with their staff for incorporation in the annual budget document. So the annual budget really serves as the work plan for each program, and then the resources needed to accomplish that plan. Council adopts the budget each year, and then regular reports, we prepare them on a biannual basis, but many programs do it every quarter, and some even monthly, depending on how much data they have to look at. It's all reviewed as part of management contracts, and then council receives an annual report on what has been achieved. We've seen a lot of results over the last decade. Service improvements and more attention paid to what it takes to provide services and the building blocks and resources needed to get things done. Organizational efficiency. There's more awareness of the timeliness of projects, getting projects done in a timely manner, getting them done on budget. Same with delivering our services in a timely way. Improved project management. More awareness of the project milestones, and you'll see throughout our budget document, if you were to look at all of our project objectives, for multi-year projects, you have specific milestones set out in each year for those multi-year projects. Stronger interdepartmental teams, more cooperation between departments. There's a higher recognition that, you know, when we set an objective in our budget and we put it in one of our plans, it's a priority, and we work together to figure out how do we get it done. Looking at some of our management indicators, we've provided a lot of information on a regular basis to managers and supervisors, some management reports that get emailed to them on a monthly basis to make sure they can kind of keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening in their operation. So we look at a few key indicators: sick leave, lost hours due to injury, employee performance evaluations submitted on time. I have a few charts here that takes a look at where we're at. If you look at total sick leave hours by fiscal year, you'll see that we're really holding steady for the last 5 years, not a lot of change in the total sick leave hours in all the departments. So right at 74,000 we've been holding. I went back a few years to when we started sending these management reports out to staff, and in fiscal year 2004, we were at about 86,000 sick leave hours. So we've really come down quite a ways, about 14%. And we seem to be holding at 74,000. Total number of injuries by fiscal year. As you can see by this chart, we're definitely at a low point at 129 injuries throughout the fiscal year. Despite having fewer injuries, we actually have seen the total number of work hours lost due to injury rise a little bit. And we've definitely seen it decline from the highs in 2004, 2005. But we've seen this rise recently because we've had some more serious injuries that required longer absences from work. But overall, I think you can attribute a lot of the decline in the decline in the work hours lost to more use of the modified duty program, where someone's injured. Instead of going back out into the field, or when they're injured, instead of being at home, they are given other duties that they can do instead of being out of the office. So we have more people back at work.
We have a question.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just go back to the previous slide for a second, Nina? I appreciate it when you said that you were sort of attributing the hours, lost hours reduction to the way that people who are injured can actually stay at their desk, but in a different, modified duty. It made me wonder, on the one before this, the slide just before this, it made me wonder, so what are we attributing this ongoing decline in the reduction of injuries? I can imagine a variety of possibilities, but what has your team assessed is really making a difference here?
Probably a lot of training. In a lot of our areas, in police, at the waterfront, fire, thousands of hours of training to prevent injuries, looking at everything from lifting items to doing frequent maneuvers that are specific to their field. We have thousands of hours of training that all of the employees in these areas perform. And that's also a target that's set regularly in our program.
So there's an investment of time in terms of the training or getting that expertise into the hands of the people that are the practitioners. And I'm assuming that this also indicates that there would be a reduction in cost even with that investment of time, because you're keeping people on the job and we're not losing qualified employees due to injuries and having to retrain somebody new, that kind of a thing. Is that accurate, and have you been assessing that as well? Or looking into those, I guess it'd be impossible really to assess the true value of all that, but is that equation really holding up?
Yes.
And bottom line, if you look at our workers' compensation cost as we've reported to you over the years, they've dropped rather dramatically. And that's bottom line savings, is because we're now not spending money paying doctors and for medical care, and we're also not paying employees when they're not here, because we've got a much more vigorous safety program.
Thank you. I'm getting a really strong message between this slide and the next slide of how this is a comprehensive program to reduce these costs. Thanks.
And we're talking not just hundreds of thousands. We're actually talking probably a couple $1 million a year in savings.
We have a reduction in personnel from 2004 to 2012 of about 80. Is that correct? But that would seem to be too small a number to affect this in any substantial way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would affect a little bit, but I think, more. I think if you go back to 2001, 2002, you actually see the numbers even higher. So this trend line started well before we reduced employees.
Thank you.
Taking a look at vehicle collisions by fiscal year, this is a specific chart of preventable vehicle collisions. And you can see here that we're down to 42. We've reached a new low from 2005 of preventable vehicle collisions where the city employee was at fault for the collision. The total number of collisions, you see a similar trend also. So we see we're doing defensive driver training. There's an increased focus on making sure that we're driving safely at the speed limit when we're using a city vehicle. So hopefully that has paid off in fewer collisions.
Are we actually driving fewer miles, or is our mileage about the same? Do we know? I mean, that would be sort of a true way of measuring this, I think, next week.
We'd have to look into that one.
Okay, question. Thanks.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Johnson, is this, obviously you're looking at the big picture of the entire organization, not broken down by department, so you have public safety mixed in with clerical and all that at the same time.
The entire organization.
So if you were to break it down by department, one would assume that public safety would be on the higher end of the scale on most of these charts.
Probably public safety, and I was thinking some of the, where you have a lot of field, crews in the field.
Right. I just trying to think about the number of collisions per fiscal year, divided by the number of employees and how that would relate to the general population. I don't know. I'm not an actuary, but kind of gave me pause.
But I think you're correct, especially within the police department. I mean, a vehicle is their office, and they're out in it, and so you just have a lot more opportunity for it. And we do, for the departments, we give them a report monthly by department and by program on this kind of data, and that's part of how we monitor it. Is when we see something starting to pop up, then everybody pays more attention to it.
Another indicator that we look at, and it's really important to us, is the number of employee evaluations, the annual performance evaluations that are completed on time. So we've completed 86% in the last fiscal year on time. So that means that overall, when we're looking at performance for the city, and it all breaks down eventually to employee performance, we're giving timely performance, feedback on performance. Now moving to performance highlights from the last fiscal year. Overall, there were 812 performance objectives that staff set out to accomplish. We achieved almost 700 of those objectives, so a total citywide of 84% of objectives were achieved. If you look at this chart, this is a quick snapshot of all of the objectives in each department and the achievement rate for each. So you can see at the very end how it breaks down to the total objectives citywide, and then 84% achieved. I wanted to go through, we're not going to have time to go through 700 achievements, but we're going to go through some highlights of those in these areas that I have on the screen. Infrastructure improvements and maintenance, so new facilities, renovations, and the preventative maintenance work to prolong the life of all of those assets, new initiatives, policies, and service enhancements, effectiveness and efficiency, excellent customer service, and service trends. In the area of infrastructure improvements, we completed the new fire administrative offices and warehouse space on Chapala. We retrofitted at Mackenzie Park, the parking lot. We installed permeable pavers to capture and treat stormwater. We completed 2 major bridge projects, the Ortega Bridge and the Haley de la Vina Bridge. And that, for seismic standards, basically we're able to meet seismic standards on those bridges and improve water flow to minimize potential flooding. The restrooms at Pershing Park and Plaza Del Mar, those were renovated. Electric vehicle charging stations were installed. 8 of them were installed at the Granada Garage, at the library, at the harbor, and the Helena parking lot. We completed seismic upgrades in parking lot 2, and this was in addition to the previous year's work when we did upgrades in parking lots 9 and 10, so we got that work taken care of. In the area of infrastructure maintenance, we established a maintenance schedule for the new airline terminal. As part of that new facility, we put together a new maintenance schedule for that location. The cleaning schedule for wastewater collection pipes, we exceeded that by 30 miles. We had a target here of 180 miles, and we exceeded that goal. Staff also in the last year implemented a new cleaning program for our sewer mains. So that might have attributed to that result. As part of our facility maintenance and renewal work, we've been finishing a lot of energy retrofit projects. We received an energy efficiency block grant of $800,000 in the past few years, and that has really enabled us to do a lot of HVAC upgrades, lighting work. Altogether, if you look at the work that we've been doing over the past 4 years, we're going to be saving $400,000 on the city's electric bill every year going forward. So $400,000 a year savings each year going forward. So great work that's been done. In terms of new initiatives and service enhancements, we updated the general plan, and that culminated many years of work and a number of meetings in the community. New self-check machines were installed at the Central Library. I talked with staff, and as a result of these self-check machines going into the library, they're now seeing their circulation, 80% of their circulation is through the self-check process. So 80% of all the books and the materials, people are checking out on their own. We installed a new payment system units in our waterfront honor fee parking lots, or started that process in 2 of the lots at the Chase Palm Park lot, and see, in 1 other lot. I'm sorry, Harbor West, okay. And I know we have our upcoming lots that we're looking at around the Cabrillo Arts Center. We also expanded our recreation offerings for children 4 years old and up, and that generated 364 new registrations. These are programs like skate school, gymnastics camp that gave us more participation. We installed new traffic signal controllers, 10 of them in the Upper State Street area, and this was really to improve the intersection performance. In the clerk's office, we implemented an electronic filing program for statements of economic interest. So council members, advisory group members, many of our staff, they're able to go online and fill it out electronically instead of having to do it on paper. We also launched a new online billing service for trash, water, and sewer customers. This is a quick snapshot of the system online. I have to give a quick plug here. Instead of doing it by sending your bill in by paper, you can go online and pay your bill online, manage your accounts online. In the area of effectiveness and efficiency, in Public Works, we limited change orders for capital improvement projects to an average of 2% of the construction project value. And this is pretty significant because we had the 2 major bridge projects that I mentioned earlier included in that total project value, and that was about $32 million. The 2% in change orders actually includes some discretionary work that we added in because it was more convenient to do the work at that time. At a particular time, we were able to get a better bid price. So overall, I think the goal was about 7%, so we were able to get it down to 2%. And we received numerous grants in all of our departments to leverage capital improvements and new services. This is everything from DUI enforcement, the Children's Library. We received $2.5 million for the Mission Creek Fish Passage project. Lots of grants to leverage what we do.
Ms. Johnson, on that last one, and this is one of the things that you've heard me say over and again is how much I, and I'm sure the whole council, really appreciates the staff's initiative, because many of those grants could slip away if we weren't timely in our response and hadn't done the preparation to be able to successfully achieve them. You know, we could apply for them, but if we hadn't done the homework, and we're ready, you know, to move forward. So clearly there's not just a punch in the clock going on there at the staff level. Each one of the departments has stepped up that way. But maybe this is to Mr. Armstrong. One of the things that I was hoping we might do, and it would be, I mean, very helpful, I think, for the public to know, would be to actually have a system-wide total of the cost of the capital program pieces, mostly all capital, what we're talking about here, but not all, mostly. The total value of those projects and the amount of the city resources that went in that did the leveraging. Because, I mean, like on the bridges, when we're talking about a 12%, 11 or 12% local match, that initiative on the part of the staff to be able to accomplish those things is worth just so much. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars here. And I know the public is very concerned that we're being wise and efficient with our use of the public's trust. This is critically important for us bringing those resources that would be available into the city, and it takes our investment of so many hundreds or thousands of dollars or a certain number of millions and multiplies it. So maybe when we do one of our capital reports of some sort, we could have something like that kind of number begin to be part of that, so public can really see the benefit that they're getting here.
Okay, we can work on something like that.
I'd really appreciate it. I think it's, you know, for us sitting here, we get to see it over and over and over again, but it really accumulates. You know, a few million here, a few million there, it starts to add up to something, you know.
In terms of state and federal laws and guidelines, meeting those laws and guidelines is a large part of some of our operations in areas of aviation, affordable housing, employee safety, police and fire training, water pollution, air emissions, fuel inspections. All of these areas do a lot of measuring, tracking to ensure that they're meeting or on top of state and federal law. The area of customer service, there are a lot of areas that go unnoticed and maybe don't get a lot of attention. Our city's computer systems, our wide area network, the financial management system where we do all of our financial reporting and tracking, manage our budgets, the combined communication center, also what we've known as the dispatch area. We've maintained an uptime through Public Works and information systems, all of their systems in place. We've maintained an uptime of all of those critical systems of 99.9%. Very important because a lot of people depend on those systems. In community development, the staff delivered 100% of building and planning files and commercial plan requests on time. And this is a very high number overall. It's about 45,000 requests. So it's a large number, large volume. Another area of priority for the parks staff, they corrected 100% of the safety issues in park facilities in an average of 8 hours. So really getting on top of things quickly as soon as it's brought to their attention. In looking at public safety response times, it's tracked in all of these areas. And for fire, police, and at the Harbor Patrol Group, we've seen a response time for fire emergencies of 2 minutes, 58 seconds. The top priority 1 police emergencies, 6 minutes and 27 seconds, and 5 minutes for harbor emergencies. And I looked at the previous year, and we're within a handful of seconds of the previous year, so we're really holding steady in all of those response times. Taking a look at a couple trends in some of our services. In our recreation registrations, I have a chart here. This is showing for the last 12 years, for all of our courses, the youth and adult, the class registrations, we've really, despite the recession, this program area has been doing very well. So the registrations overall have gone up 13%. The Carrillo Street Gym is being used more. Word is out, and there are very few gym facilities throughout the community. And as people have started learning more about the Carrillo Street Gym, we've seen the use of that gym rise in the last year. So it's now up 27% from the previous year. And then we've also achieved at the golf course a greater number of rounds. This was done, though, through reduced discount greens fees. So the downside there is that the greens fee revenue is down 2%, but the total number of rounds, the total number of people heading to the golf course is up. To wrap up some of these trends, water conservation checkups. We were hearing about the water conservation strategies for commercial facilities earlier. The home water conservation checkups are up 11%, so we're working with residents to help identify opportunities to conserve water. Downloadable books are very popular, and that service has increased people checking out books by downloading it to their computer, downloading it to their iPad. That's gone up by 121% over the prior year. In your packets, there's an attachment with some examples of objectives not met. So we may have achieved a lot citywide, but there are a number of objectives that were not met in all departments. So there are a few examples on that attachment, and I've listed a few here on the screen. In the police department, we processed 76% of special event permits within 5 days. So we're short of our goal of 93%. That was our target. And we attributed a lot of that to getting a lot of last-minute applications during the high event periods. At the airport, we weren't able last year to complete the final phase of the airline terminal. This was relocating the historic terminal building, and that was delayed. We had some structural issues with the 1942 terminal. Staff's now looking at that being done. It's almost done now, that opening up early 2013. So as we learn from each year, staff continues to evaluate the objectives, adjust what they're doing, learn from the current and previous year, and then report out on the major work efforts. And they start developing the next set of objectives in January for the upcoming fiscal year.
And now I'll wrap it up with just a few comparative indicators. When we started giving these reports to the City Council a few years ago, they also asked that how do we compare with other agencies? And one of the difficulties is every city's different. And then the other problem is a lot of cities don't measure performance, one comprehensively or in a consistent way between, the way we do it. And it's been a real problem throughout my career in municipal government of how do you measure your performance when everybody measures it differently. In some cases, they count just actions rather than kind of ultimate results. And so that's been a real problem for us. But we do have some comparative information for you, primarily financial information. And I think what you'll find in looking at this information is it's amazing how different cities are in terms of the resources available, the revenues they have, and also how they spend their money. And oftentimes we get questions about why can't we have as many police officers as Santa Monica, or why can't we have as big a park system as somebody else? And part of it's just the resources that are available, but it's also decisions that were made 10, 20, 30 years ago at a point in time that have been fixed now, and we're basically, have a certain revenue mix that was primarily after when Prop 13 was approved that we're required to stick to. So I think you'll find this fairly interesting. What we do is we looked at other cities of comparable size. We also look at coastal cities because we find that coastal cities, one, they tend to be more expensive, and so the costs are similar also in terms of property values. And we'd look at different information. So here's the cities we compare with. Santa Cruz, Redondo Beach, Newport Beach, Santa Monica, Carlsbad, Berkeley, Ventura, Sunnyvale, Oceanside, and Huntington Beach. And as I said, most of them have a focus on tourism. They're coastal cities. Their populations range from 60,000, I think that's Santa Cruz, up to 200,000, which would be Huntington Beach. Big difference in land area size from 6 to 42 miles. I think Santa Monica is the smallest with 6 square miles, and 42 is pretty large. And then, as you can imagine, they have a broad range of demographics. So this is general fund revenue per capita. And if you look at the blue line there, that's the median. So that's where half of the cities are below it and half are above. And this is general fund revenue per capita. So it's just in the general fund. And as you can see, the median there is a little over $1,000 per person. And we use per capita because this is a good way to normalize it, based on population. The one that always sticks out is Santa Monica, $3,240. So Santa Barbara's $1,100. So they're almost triple what we have in terms of the size of their general fund. Their general fund is as big as pretty much our entire city budget. You can see Newport Beach is up there. We're bracketed by Berkeley. They're about $1,300. And then on Santa Cruz, just slightly below us. And then you can see the other range down. And Oceanside's down at $687 per capita. Looking at tax revenues, and these are the primary ways that we finance those general services. And we're going to go through sales, property tax, business license, utility users, and transient occupancy. So first with sales tax, this is again on a per capita basis. And you can see we are right at the median at $224 per person. So this is what we're generated. This one's actually, if you think about it, this is pretty surprising. I think most folks would look at Santa Barbara and believe that we must be above the median in sales tax, and we're really not. As you can see, Santa Cruz is a little above us, Newport Beach, Carlsbad, and then again, Santa Monica is way up there. Now, we only have the county-wide rates here, but put those on if you can read them there. I guess it doesn't read. But the rate in Santa Monica, as I recall, the total rate is 9 3/4. And that's part of the reason Santa Monica is higher is they have we receive 1 cent of the sales tax. Santa Monica had a voter-approved initiative, or a voter-approved was put on by the city council for an extra ½ cent. So they actually get 1.5 cents. Versus the 1 cent. And I think, based on what I know on these other cities, all of the others are at the 1 cent range of the ones we compare with. But Santa Monica was well above us even before they got that ½ cent. But this really puts them up there. Next one is property tax. Again, this is a real surprise. You would think that based on the high property values in Santa Barbara that we would at least be at the median. We're actually below the median. The median is there at Sunnyvale at $312 per person. Again, Santa Monica's up there, but the one that's really high is Newport Beach, which is way up there, $850. So they're, 3.5 times as high as us on a per capita basis. Amazing the variations you see here. And then you can see the others. Carlsbad's relatively high.
Hotchkiss?
Do you have an explanation for that at all? I mean, could it be faster home turnover?
It has, in my opinion, it has to do with a number of factors. One, when Prop 13 passed in the state legislature, they basically fixed your percentage of the pie. So if you had a relatively low percentage of the total property tax pie back in 1978, that was fixed in time. And so in some of these cities, and possibly Santa Barbara, we had a relatively small part of the pie, and I know we did, because it's only 12%, whereas some of these other cities had they had a higher property tax rate, and so that was fixed, and they basically benefit from that forever on in terms of getting more of it. The other thing is, if you look at Newport Beach, much of Newport Beach is relatively new. They've got that Newport Coast area that's all is brand new, and so they got the higher values to start, whereas a lot of our property hasn't had as much turnover. Some owners have owned their property since the 70s, so you haven't had as much turnover. So I think those are the two factors that affect it the most.
Yeah, it makes good sense. Thank you.
One area where we are well ahead of the median is in transient occupancy tax. As you can see, the median is about $52 per person. And then you can see we're up about $163. Santa Monica, again, leads the league there, and Newport Beach is ahead of us. Carlsbad is one that always surprised me, but apparently they have a lot of hotel rooms there. And then you can see how it drops down. So this is probably one of our bright stars in terms of our revenue mix compared to the other cities.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yeah.
On the TOT, the T-bid effectively doubled that, right? You don't have is that included in the 163?
No, this is
Separate,
the
right?
this is the 12, or excuse me, it's the 10% that goes into our general fund. So
Right.
it doesn't include the 2%, and the T-bid is outside of that because that goes straight to the Convention and Visitor Bureau, and none of it comes through the city's books other than we collect it for them.
Understood. Thank you.
Well, and the T-bid's, what, 50 cents or up to $2 a night per room,
Yeah.
not 12% of the bill, so, or 10% of the bill. It's a little different. But Mr. Rouse?
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Armstrong, is the number of keys or room keys per capita factor into that at all? I mean, I don't know how that would mix.
I think
for a
it's
tourist-based economy here as opposed to some of these other cities that have other types of industry.
Yeah, clearly, if you look at the lower ones down there, they're the ones that don't have a lot of hotel rooms. I think where we do well is we have a fair amount of hotel rooms, and also what in the industry they call the RevPAR, the revenue per room, is relatively high because we have a high occupancy rate. We have a very high occupancy rate compared to a lot of cities, which allows then the industry to charge more per room, and that's why the revenue per room is high. Another one, business license tax revenue. This is not a large revenue source for the city. It's about $2.2 million. You can see the median is there at Redondo Beach, about a little less than $20 per capita. We're at 25, and again, Santa Monica is over 10 times higher than we are. And my understanding is that Santa Monica, back right when Prop 13 passed, they adjusted their property tax up dramatically and figured out a way to tax employees in their city through a big gross receipts tax on employees. And so that's why theirs is so high. But also you can see Berkeley's is relatively high too. But dramatic difference there. I mean, it's just amazing. If we had the rate that Santa Monica did, we'd be up around, $20 million instead of $2.5 million.
Mr. Armstrong, so Santa Monica taxes businesses based on the number of employees?
No, my understanding is it's called a business license tax, but it's actually on the employee. It's called a gross receipts tax on an employee within your business. So it's kind of like an income tax, but they call it a business license tax.
So it's associated with the payroll?
Yeah, but it's through the business license tax provisions of state law.
Okay. We should, market them to relocate to Santa Barbara.
Not every city has a utility users tax. This is done by every city council. Now it requires a vote. But you can see, and this is what goes into our general fund. So this is, as you know, we have our tax is 6%, and then some parts it's 5.75%. And this is that portion that goes into our general fund. The other half goes into the streets fund. But you can see, again, the variation. Newport Beach, Carlsbad, and Oceanside do not have utility users taxes. And then you see Sunnyvale, and then we are right the median there. And then you can see it goes up, and again, Santa Monica. And their rate is 10%, and it all goes into their general fund. I think we have the rates up there. You can't read them. Go ahead. And then just a little in terms of expenditure trends, and we have these broken out in two ways. One, percentage of the general fund budget, and then the other is per capita. So first, in police expenditures as a percentage of their general fund, you can see the median is around 32%. We're slightly above that at 34%. And then you can see Redondo Beach and Oceanside, and as you recall, those were two cities that had relatively small general funds, so a much larger percentage of their general fund goes towards police services. And then looking at it on a per capita basis, you can see there's again Santa Monica up there at $800 per capita on police services. The median is $366, and we're about $36 per capita above the median. So we're slightly above the median there, and then you can see Sunnyvale is a little unusual. They initially had a total public safety department where they combined police and fire. They've slowly been separating them out, but it's probably not even a good comparison because it's still a public safety department. Then looking at fire expenditures, as you can see, we spend, the median is 19% of the general fund. We're at 21%. And then you can see Oceanside, Redondo Beach, and Newport are ahead of us. And then in terms of per capita expenses, we're above the median, a little over by 10%. So the median's $209 per capita, and we're at $245. And then you can see Santa Monica, again, and Newport Beach are way above us. And then in Parks and Recreation, you can see it's much, one of the things you see here is there's only 5 cities, and that's because some of these other cities have, they have different organizational arrangements. For example, they might have parks maintenance in their public works department, or they might separate out tree maintenance. So we just couldn't get good comparable data except for these cities. But you can see the median is 12%, and a couple are at 14%, but relatively narrow band there. And then on a per capita basis, we are the median. We're at about $150 per capita. But you don't get the major extremes here that you saw in some of the others, a relatively narrow band. So with that, we'll respond to any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any speaker slips for this. Any questions? Oh, you do. You want Mr. Burke? Would you like to come on up? We'll let you do a speaker slip afterwards. Oh, no, you already did it. Good
Hi, my name is Robert Burke. I'm a member of the Rental Housing Mediation Board, and as long as we're talking about performance, I wanted to brag about the Rental Housing Mediation Board. The statistics that is common knowledge is that when people come in for mediation, we have a 95% success rate. And of those, the very few that walk out, sometimes within about 2 weeks, the parties get together on their own and settle their disputes. I want to also praise Ms. Andrea Bufano for the yeoman task that she does. We handle probably about 1,200 contacts per year by phone, and she's the first recipient of those. And housing is on Maslow's, it's the second tier. There's water and air is our first survival, and housing is at the second tier. And so we are one of the very few agencies of the advisory boards that deals with the mental welfare, the mental well-being of the citizens of Santa Barbara. And so that's just part of what we do. And I speak for the board. I think that we're all eager to serve, and we do the best job we can. It usually takes about 2 hours per mediation to go through the issues, have them talking, and come to a resolution. At the end of the mediation, an agreement is formed, it is typed up, it is signed. It is a legally binding argument that can be taken to a court of law if it is breached. And we have 2 products to sell. One is confidentiality and the other is neutrality. We show no partisanship between the rental owners and the rental residents. And we have good stead on that, and that is what sustains us and makes us an attractive entity. The number, if you're having problems, is 564-5420. Again, that number is 564-5420. Thank you for the opportunity to express my, first of all, my appreciation to be on the board and that we are doing a good job. Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you. To the council, any comments or questions? Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for that report. The financial information is very interesting, and all those allusions to Santa Monica, certainly this really brings home the why of how they're able to be so effective with particularly in the area of transient management. I have 2 areas of question which won't surprise Mr. Armstrong at all. One is there's one P3 that the fire department didn't reach, and that's the resolving 75% of the code enforcement cases. And I know that earlier on there and it speaks to staff shortages in the area of particularly wildland residents. And I would appreciate the council, and maybe this would occur with the wildland plan or with something to do with the fire department, hearing more about how many inspections there were, and just how many of those were not satisfactory, and just what the follow-up is on that. That obviously is the single highest risk year in, year out that we have is in the wildland area. And so, and particularly if we're not coming up anything significantly short in the way of numbers, 72% versus 75. But I would appreciate hearing what are those numbers that are behind that figure. And the other one is I've had a couple of conversations with both Mr. Armstrong and our fire chief about the lack of caps on the sprinkler on the standpipes in buildings. I see that our mayor giving me the eye on this. I see.
Ever since you've been on council, so it's good. You're persistent.
Well, as long as I'm here, and I see any caps that are not on standpipes, I'm going to continue to. And I see that when I look at one of the P3s, I don't know how this is cataloged in the pile there, but it says that the commercial facilities were the inspection of commercial facilities achieved the objective. In fact, they inspected the commercial occupancies. Over 100% of them were inspected on a 2-year cycle. And I just have this. I can't see how we're losing that many caps when we're in a 2-year cycle of inspection. So I would appreciate having that highlighted somewhere along the line as we discuss our fire department in one frame or another. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions or comments? I also want to thank you for the presentation. The question that comes to my mind has to do with the Parks and Recreation expenditures. We have not only a large number of parks, but some of those parks have a huge number of acres. And so when I think about the percentage of the budget for the Parks and Rec Department, especially as it comes to maintenance, and tree maintenance, not street trees, but within the parks, how does that really compare to those other 4 cities in terms of the acreage? So are we doing more with less funding relatively to our general fund budget? And so that was just a question, because I imagine we're probably high up there in the number of park acres within our percentage of our square miles in the city. But so just a thought there.
Yeah, I think in prior years, because of the short staff, we've given you the acres per park, or our acres per city of parkland, and I think we can actually provide that to you because it doesn't change.
I don't think it changes, right? Yeah. So I hope not.
Yeah, and then it's important to break out developed acres versus undeveloped acres, because you can have a Parma Park or something like that, which is primarily undeveloped and doesn't require a lot of maintenance, versus something like Alameda Park and
the Bowling Green, lawn bowling.
Yeah, lawn bowling takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Mr. House.
Just real quick, Mr. Armstrong and Ms. Johnson. You mentioned the performance performance evaluations, and that you're working on making sure that those are timely in their reporting. And it seems like as a feedback mechanism, that's great, and it's good to see that. Just in terms of the corporate culture, how are we doing on contemporaneous feedback, immediate feedback, or the kind of feedback that enhances performance, that's not just based on a summary evaluation at the end of a year or 2 years, depending on the cycle for an employee, but on your supervisors actually getting back to the employees in a more immediate frame. It's not the summary evaluation mode. It's more like in the ongoing conversation for performance improvement that may not show up in that other summary evaluation format. How are we doing in that, Mr. Armstrong? What are we using to encourage that kind of immediate feedback?
Well, I think the most important thing you can do is train managers and supervisors, on basic supervision skills and techniques, because the goal is that when you give someone a performance review, that it's not a surprise. That if you've given them good feedback during the year, then when they receive their performance review, they're not shocked. You know, wow, nobody's told me I'm performing well. And I can tell you it varies by department. A lot of how we monitor that is anecdotally, because then when we have discipline actions, you know, and people appeal them or we look into them, but it is an area of constant, you know, monitoring and training. You know, just getting performance reviews done on time that's just one factor. It's the quality. You know, I think generally we're pleased with, although we take a fair amount of, you know, discipline and corrective actions, we don't get a lot of appeals to the Civil Service Commission, which tells us that in most cases the employees accept it and they don't believe it's unreasonable. I think we've had a slight uptick recently in those kinds of things, not a huge uptick, but you kind of have to monitor it in a number of different ways, you know, because you know, it's constantly training. We always have new supervisors, you know, and one of the real challenges for us is oftentimes we take the best doers and we make them the supervisors, and the skills.
Not necessarily the same skill set.
The skill sets necessary to be a good supervisor they're different, and so then you've got to take those new supervisors and train them and help them, you know, become successful, because they are some different skills.
Well, that may be a conversation for our budget discussions later on, but how are you feeling in terms of our, I mean, at least when I came on council, it was a very big priority of yours to ensure that we had that kind of training available to our rising stars and then ongoing training for kind of maintenance and upkeep, if you will, of your existing supervisory staff. How do you feel that we're doing in that area? Or is that something that we're going to be discussing as we get towards the budget time for really maintaining a robust training program?
In my opinion, we're not doing enough of that. That's an area we've really slipped in.
We had to cut, I know, during the
and
recession.
And we're trying to slowly bring it back and kind of cobble it together, and then focus on those high return areas. And I think in supervision skills is one of them.
All right, great. I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Thanks for the good work, by the way. I mean, it's really great that this, I mean, obviously each department gets to toot their own horn here, but these are meaningful improvements and meaningful measures. And I know you go all the way down to those fine levels in each one of the different departments and work groups, but this approach seems to be really bearing fruit. And I, for one, really admire that style of management. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, move on to item number 12.
Item 12, purchase order for police in-car video system and installation.
Okay, Captain.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Captain Whittam. With me today is Dennis Diaz, who's our interim information technologies manager. And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the program that we have set forth to on our search for the in-car video cameras for our patrol vehicles. And what Dennis has done is he's created a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to be brief, and then after that, any questions that you have, entertain. This has been quite a long process. We started it about a year ago, looking for the right fit for the police department for our cameras. And in that, we've visited many agencies. We've had 7 different vendors come and give presentations to us, and we've narrowed it down to one vendor of which that we're selecting. So Dennis is going to give a presentation on that vendor and the program.
So moving forward, I thought I'd give you an overview of the project timeline. As Captain said, this project is taking quite a long time. We started with inviting 6 potential vendors for their demonstration of their solution. And what we were looking for was an end-to-end solution, not only the in-car video camera hardware in the car, but also a centralized way of managing the data in the back end. And vetting out any video vendors that were not law enforcement specific. We really wanted to get a vendor that was law enforcement specific, not cameras installed in delivery trucks or anything of that nature. So in February of 2012, we began the pilot testing program, and we vetted it down from the original 6 down to 4, and had their equipment installed from end to end, installed in the car as well as in the building, inclusive to wireless uploads. In August of 2012, we narrowed it down to L3 Communications and WatchGuard as the 2 vendors that provided the technical requirements that we had been looking for in terms of looking for an in-car video solution for the police department. And in October, we concluded that WatchGuard was the chosen vendor, and as you see in the subsequent slides, you'll see why. Just a brief overview of the project and kind of the features summarizing. 27 cars will be retrofitted with the in-car video DVRs. The project will include interview room cameras. We thought it would be an opportune time to include interview room cameras with this project and have the continuity between the evidence that's captured in the car as well as when we bring them into the station for interviewing. So we thought we'd include that. The cameras in the cars will include a forward-facing camera that will capture the front view of the car, as well as a rear-facing camera to capture the back seat of the vehicle. Event tracking, hard to tell from the image here, but if you look, what this really is our way of chronologically analyzing a single event. And for situations where we need to understand exactly when the officer activated their wireless microphone, when they turned on their lights, applied brakes, how fast the officer was traveling at the time of the recording capture, that is all captured in the event tracking software, which is inclusive to WatchGuard's solution. Wireless uploads. At the moment the patrol car enters the driveway of our building, the wireless uploads will happen. And it can do it in such a manner that if they get another call and they have to rush off, it can continue the wireless uploads at a later time. Wireless microphone. WatchGuard has the best on the market, not in terms of sound quality and also the range. And what we're really trying to address here is we full well know at the police department that some events will not happen in perfect view of the camera. So if we have a large range in our microphone that at least at a minimal, we can capture the audio quality of the event. Future capabilities, this will not be included to our project, but in future releases with this vendor will be streaming video. If you remember back in 2007, there was the gunman on Lacumbra Overpass. This would be a good situation for our watch commanders to have parked a black and white with a view of the gunman and had the ability to peer into that camera from a remote location. Design, we are really biased IT. You know, I think a lot of people think of IT projects as being just merely technical, but the thing we pride ourselves at the police department is working well with our officers and trying to find a best solution for them that works best in the field. And we were looking for a vendor, a solution that was really easy to use. If you can imagine, officers have myriads of things that they're trying to do and all the various equipments that they have. So that was a goal of ours to find the ease of operation, if you will. We also looked for a vendor that had minimal amount of training. Again, officers are already overwhelmed with many, many things that they have to remember how to do, and so we're looking at things, ways to find a solution that was easy to train upon. Rugged design, officers can be pretty rough on their equipment, so we needed to choose a solution that can withstand the 24/7 operation of these hardware and being used on on daily basis. Record after the fact. Basically, with record after the fact, if you can imagine, officers won't have their finger hovering over a record button. Record after the fact gives us the ability to continuously record an event without actually have to manually activate the recorder. So for an example, in this image here, we have a vehicle that's going to roll through this intersection. And so the officer wasn't prepared to capture that. So he didn't have the opportunity to hit record. But that's okay, because with this system, we have a buffered recording of where we can look back up to 30 hours. So basically, if we choose to configure, we could configure the entire system to record an entire shift of a patrol officer. Video management. What was very important for us at the police department, because we deal with so many public requests and evidence requests, we needed to have a system that could manage the workflow and have the central repository of all these video files. WatchGuard had a fantastic centralized video management solution. We needed access controls. We needed the ability to know when, who, and why these videos were being accessed, particularly when they leave our building. Yeah, centralized management. Here, there's kind of a buzz in the advent of body-worn cameras and smartphones and handheld cameras. We wanted a solution that could handle all these miscellaneous video files as well, in addition to the in-car video camera equipment. High definition. Most of us in this room have high definition televisions at home. We thought, why not have high definition for capturing the events in a law enforcement environment? Along with high definition, you're getting the high definition sound. Not a lot of people think about high definition, but you're getting the quality through the HD video capturing. And that's very important. As you can see from this illustration, there's a magnification on the license plate. And because we're capturing in HD, we have the ability to do that, which you would normally not have if you were capturing in non-HD. Here's a sample video. I tried to capture events that were at night, day, and to just give you an idea of how well and how smooth the video is capturing, whether it's at dusk or sunset or, in this case, nighttime. So you're seeing how you don't have that jittering frames. It's very smooth. You're able, officers can review it. Supervisors can review it and detail the event as they're watching it. Here's an overturned car at night, and you'll see off on the right, you'll see two suspects fleeing. You'll see this part where the suspect will throw half a pound of marijuana out, and we capture that. And again here, because we're capturing in HD, we're able to see the markings on the moving train that's traveling at about 50 miles an hour. If approved, the installation timeline, I'm told that this slide is actually incorrect, but I'm told by the vendors there was a little bit of a pushback in that they've now gotten some new customers since I've created this PowerPoint presentation. But upon approval, it looks like that we would be tentatively scheduled for about the middle of February, and the vendor says it would take about 10 business days to have all of our 27 black and whites retrofitted with in-car video. Any questions?
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You mentioned briefly something about streaming video, and I was kind of curious on how that works. So the black and white can be in one location, the officer in another, but still access or see in real time what was going on?
Correct. Streaming video would give us the ability to, as you said, have the black and white parked at, for example, a barricaded subject. And the video streaming could be viewed even in the building. It could be at our police headquarters, or it could be in another black and white for that matter. If a supervisor's on the other side of town and he needed to peer into something real quick, that will be a future capability of the system.
And then in terms of, you said it was a durable or relatively strong system. So in the case of a black and white being in like a big wreck or something and along those lines, is it, does it have like the kind of protection prevent it from fire or destruction along those lines? Is it?
Absolutely. The DVR actually records in 2 storage locations, and so in the event of a wreckage, there's a removable thumb drive that would pop open, and we could manually upload the files if we had to.
Wow. And of course, then I think you demonstrated at the end there. So when it comes down to analyzing something frame by frame, it's relatively easy to do with the system.
Correct. The event tracker is a huge one because you really have a systematic way of looking at this time an officer deployed their microphone, they turned on their lights. You can articulate all these things when you go to court, and that was very, very important to have that evidence and just save us some time in the litigation process.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very interesting presentation. This is great to hear that we're this close on this project. The storage of the information, obviously that's a boggling amount. How long is the video kept, or do you anticipate it being kept? And talk about that a little, if you would.
Captain Wyndham will talk to you about the video retention policies, but I can tell you we are initially configuring the system to retain as much as all of a year's worth of recordings from all vehicles. So we are building this system to retain as much video data as much as possible.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember White, when we visited other agencies, we had that same question. How long do you keep it? And, you know, typically it's kept for about a year. Once that's done, then if they're going to purge it, you know, the space for this costs less and less as time goes by. You know, and what other agencies have found, too, is that some of the video storage is kept not as high definition. Just the streaming video that's kept from the vehicles is not high def, but those areas when an officer pushes the button or activates their lights, it starts the high definition, so it's much less space that's utilized. The important issue for us is those items that we need for court purposes and discovery. Those will be kept forever, or as long as until that case dispositions. Those are identified and those are stored, and then we'll keep those as evidence. But the just day-to-day activities that each car captures will be kept for about a year.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of practical questions. So if I'm an officer and I go on patrol, I'm recording front and back automatically, even if I don't punch a button?
The streaming video is, yes, and we have the ability to configure that how long we want. We could make it 10 minutes prior, or we could make it up to 30 hours prior, because what it's really doing is it's recording on a loop.
So what are we telling our guys? When you pull somebody over, hit a record button, then we go into high definition?
Yes. I believe that's correct. And then if there's a pre-event that you want recorded, that pre-event then will also be recorded. However, we configure the system with our IT. Say if you push the button, then it'll back up and it'll record. So if we wanted it 10 minutes, it'll capture 10 minutes prior to that event.
There's an awful lot of data here. Is this going to require additional personnel to handle it?
To handle it, yes. It will probably, we're not sure at this time whether it's going to be a half or a full-time employee, but, you know, that's going to be a part of the project.
Okay. The last question, I can see the benefits of this, but if I was an officer, I also might not feel too good with somebody always looking over my shoulder, if I can put it that way. What is the experience of previous or past forces where these folks have instituted this? And maybe they're not willing to talk about it. I don't know.
Well, we went to a lot of agencies a few months ago. We went to, it's been a long and wide search, and we targeted 4 different agencies that used the 2 different systems. We had 2 that used the L3. We had 2 that used WatchGuard. We had an opportunity to talk to their command staff about it, and we also had an opportunity to talk to some of their rank-and-file officers. One happened to be the POA president, and that was down in Buena Park. And at first, he did not like the idea of just what you were saying, somebody looking over their shoulder. But when it got him out of trouble, because it captured an incident that exonerated him from any wrongdoing, he was 100% for the system. So, yes, I know that there are going to be those employees out there that don't like Big Brother looking over your shoulder. However, we find in most of the cases this exonerates employees from doing wrongdoing rather than catching them doing wrongdoing.
I understand. Is Bluetooth involved in any of this at all?
It is with the ruggedized modems that we're speccing in conjunction with this.
Just, I don't know where this fits in, but I have Bluetooth in my car, and sometimes I walk away and my phone rings, but it doesn't ring on my phone. It's still ringing in my car. So, and you have to jump back and forth. Is that, I don't know if that's a problem or not.
It
We'll
shouldn't
see.
be. It shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Diaz and Captain Whittam. Are there cameras in the interview rooms now?
Yes, there are.
Okay, so you're getting 4 more. So then the motion has that this cost is $208,000 and
Yeah.
some?
Yes.
So that includes the cost of the 4 cameras in the interview rooms?
Yeah, that would be the entire project. And just a word about the 4 interview rooms. We put that out there because the system we have in the interview rooms right now is outdated. It uses DVDs, and this is a DVR recorder. And it's important as well, WatchGuard could provide a solution that when an officer walks into the interview room recording area, he can record just like his car does. There's no difference between the systems, so they act exactly the same. There's an ease of operation with that system, and it also brings it up, and now those recordings are on the same system as the cars, so it's very cohesive on the one system. Makes it very easy for evidence tracking and for discovery for the district attorney's office.
Well, thank you, and I'm excited about this, I guess. So ready to vote for it whenever we
Okay. We have a few more lights on. Mr. House?
Thanks for the presentation. It's really helpful to have this much information and to know that you've really gone over it so thoroughly. What about the motorcycles? It sounds like it's going to be in the police cars themselves. And but is this possible to utilize any of this for the motorcycle patrol officers?
Councilmember House, at this time it's going to be for the cars. There may be a solution in the future for the motorcycles. I don't, right now, there isn't a solution that I'm not.
It just seems like they'll be in a similar kind of situation, and if that were possible. So the system hasn't been deployed on motorcycles at any point?
Correct. To my knowledge, there's no. Motorcycles have a very unique environment. They don't have the power to power these type of mobile devices like a car would. And so that's the struggle that a lot of vendors will have to deal with in terms of making technology specific to motorcycles. Now, with that being said, there is some ways, there's some things that we could do to accomplish that. We just didn't decide to look at it, investigate it at this time.
I see. Thanks for the explanation. Thank you very much.
So these devices are powered through the vehicle or separate battery, or how do they keep powered up?
Currently, our patrol vehicles have a secondary battery in the trunk. The primary battery, which is in the front, powers the startup of the vehicle, and we opted to go to a secondary battery just in case that runs down with the equipment in the car, because there is a high amperage draw from all the systems that the car will still start. When the car starts, it starts to charge both batteries. So the city yards is aware of our project, what we're doing, and the amperage draw of these. We consulted with them. They say that this system's not going to be a problem on the draw with the vehicles. We had a few months, about 6 months ago, we had an issue with the rear batteries draining too quickly. That was a systems issue that we corrected just through a minor IT fix. When the car is stopped, the computers in the car still run for a certain amount of time, and that can be regulated. We powered that down a little quicker, and that solved that problem. So the amperage draw on the video system is not as much as it will be to make this an issue.
The department, we've been able to have audio recordings of officers through dispatch. You have the dispatch feed and that you store for similar reasons. And the video here doesn't have audio. Is that correct, or does it?
The video does have audio. It
Does.
just had rock and roll music playing in the background, so I didn't want to play that.
Okay, so
But it does. That was very important to note that, again, we're so used to HD video. It's the HD sound you're getting. And so that's
it's
very,
HD sound as well.
very,
Okay.
very important when you're doing witness statements, or you're doing anytime you're really trying to hear what's happening in the background, ambient noises, things that an officer may need to articulate in the report, you're going to have the best ability in order to capture that audio event.
And how far away from the vehicle can you hear, like if something's happening outside the vehicle?
1,400 feet.
1,400
so
feet.
It's quite a distance. It's about a block and a half
It
away.
has the wireless microphone has 1,400 foot range, but you're outside of the microphone's ability to record the audio, you're probably talking about 10, 15 feet.
And I know one of the reasons why we were looking at this also had to do with comparing our police department with others in the county, and I think it's us in Guadalupe that did not have a system. How would you compare this system to what the sheriff's department has, Goleta and Carp, or, well, they're with the sheriff's department, I guess the sheriff's department, and the city of Santa Maria?
I went out to the sheriff's department and I talked to several deputies who use their current system, and it's a decent system, but it's now, as technology moves on, it's more dated than this. This is the state of the art. They liked their system. When I told them about the one that we were considering, this one, they kind of wished that they were up to date with the technology as we were.
Okay. Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hotchkiss asked the question about additional employees. Do we have folks that are working with this in this area already in the department, and so there would be a change of task to some degree, or will we be looking forward to another half a position coming in the next budget?
In terms of workload?
It was originally discussed through the in-car video project that a full-time person would help not only manage the hardware with the DVRs and the maintenance and anything, care and feeding of the system on a daily basis, but also with the evidence requests. That was one thing that we really came to light when we did the site visits with other agencies, is that we do an inordinate amount of evidence requests and public requests. So that's what at this point we're speculating, that we would need a full-time person, but we probably need to think about it a bit more.
Once we get cameras and we get the evidence in the car, the defense attorneys and the district attorney could be requesting probably in every case wanting this video evidence. And that's going to create a workload from the police department side is in providing that and making sure that they get the evidence that they're entitled to and that area that they're not entitled to, because it may capture areas that are privacy issues that we would want to redact from the video.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of going back to the streaming thing, I'm curious, would this system have the capability, and do any other agencies ever use the ability to access fixed hotspots? For example, if an officer were in a patrol car and wanted to access the camera within the parking lot or a hotspot around town that's been identified that we decided to observe sometime in the future, is that something that could be possibly integrated into something like this?
In regards to hotspots and whether we can connect them to peer into or video streaming, it's a possibility. Of course, we have to abide by DOJ policy, and so that would basically mean that any hotspot that we do connect to would have to be secured by the police department or city-owned. It couldn't be just like your hotspot at Starbucks or something like that.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of in our city parking structures where we've decided to install cameras, and we do have PD patrol or go by from time to time, but rather than having the black and white actually have to turn in or get out of the vehicle, if they could, check what's going on.
Sure, absolutely. It's a possibility of doing that. One of the things that we've thought about is instead of having the officers always have to go back to the department to do a wireless upload of their video, is to leverage hotspots for that very reason. And so as they're traversing the city, if they come in contact of a hotspot, the upload could incrementally, at least at a certain percentage of uploads happen, and so that they wouldn't have to spend all of their time offloading or uploading the video at the station.
And I don't see any speaker slips here for this. Mr. House?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move, and thank you very much again. I'd like to move that we waive the formal bid process and authorize the City General Services Manager to issue purchase orders to the WatchGuard, and Global Mounting Solutions as described in the Council Agenda Report, items A and B.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hotchkiss, did you have a question?
I do have a question, Mr. Wiley. Do you foresee that this these evidentiary requests that we were speaking of may cause an increase in workload in your office?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, I'm sure the department would know better than I would, but I know it's fundamental that the district attorney's office and the defense attorneys, for all criminal investigations, they're going to need copies of it. It'll be standard process that typically this would go to the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office would then provide it to defense attorneys. That's for criminal investigations. We're going to have civil issues, civil litigation matters where the same thing will happen. But essentially, it's all a public record. It's all discoverable. But I believe that the beauty of this state-of-the-art approach, the HD digital preservation of this, is that it makes it a lot more accessible, a lot more reproducible and copyable, and easier to provide to people than in the old days when you're dealing with cassette tapes and even in CDs or DVDs. So, but as I say, I think the department probably knows a lot more about that than I would.
Any comments on that? And that's probably something we ought to track.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Hotchkiss, we have recently updated our policy manual and have implemented a very comprehensive policy on mobile audio video procedures, and this is guided by law, current case law, and what's in current bodies of law as to who gets it, when it gets it. So that should take care of about 95% of any issues that come up, and those outstanding 5% issues, then we consult the city attorney's office on to resolve. So it's pretty specific as to what we do with the video evidence when it's recorded.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that passes. Thank you very much. Good work. We have a couple of closed sessions. Oh, first, council member committee assignment reports, if any. Ms. Murillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am in the holiday spirit. We have been going to so many events. The Milpas Street tree lighting ceremony was a blast, and the holiday parade, the Greater Santa Barbara Lodging and Restaurant Association. Gosh, I'm trying to think if I did any actual, assignments of, my committees. I did do a little volunteer work at Casa Esperanza last week, and so that was serious. I have solidified my office hours at the Eastside Library. They're going to be the fourth Monday of the month, every month. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Hotchkiss?
Nothing more than to say what was on page 1 of the newspaper, that we had a terrific downtown parade and something of a intra-council electric car race going down the street to make it fun. It was a great night.
Yep. And the rain held up. That was great. Okay, we have a couple of closed session items.
Item 13, Council Chamber Safety and Security. Item 14, Conference with Labor Negotiator. And item 15, Conference with Real Property Negotiators, 1102 East Montecito Street, 1111 East Mason Street, 2505 Modoc Road, and 700 East Anapamu Street.
Okay, and we won't have anything to report from the closed sessions, but before we adjourn, I'd like to honor this meeting in memory of Barry Burkus, who died the last few days, and he certainly was not only a well-known local architect, but internationally renowned, changed literally the shape of cities throughout the world. And some things the city agreed with and some things they didn't, but he was a good man, amazing patron of the arts, and we hope to see that children's museum on a railroad depot property built with that is his design. So we're going to adjourn in his memory. Thank you.